Mahima. So actually today I want to talk about two themes, because there is this theme of a vision and the power of a vision, and the second is about collaboration. So what I'll do is I want to set forth Educate Girls' vision in front of you, tell you the journey of that vision, and then I'll come to the second theme, which is about collaboration, which I think is key to fueling this particular vision. So Educate Girls' vision over the next 5 years is to bring 1.5 million out-of-school girls back into school across Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, UP, and Bihar. But why? Why is this particular vision so important? And that's because, even though we have so many problems in the world today, we know that educating girls is one of the biggest accelerators. It helps to improve 9 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The World Bank says that it's possibly one of the best investments that a country can make. Climate scientists recently rated 80 actions to reverse global warming, and they rated educating girls at number 6. At number 6, it's rated higher than electric cars and solar panels. Anything you want to impact, malnutrition, health, nutrition, employability, all of these indicators get a massive boost when girls go to school. So in India, we've made a lot of progress with the Right to Education Act. We've made a lot of progress with universalizing elementary education for all. But we still have around 4 million out-of-school girls. And these girls are out of school because of poverty, because of other socioeconomic indicators, but also because of a lot of cultural factors. And that's, in a lot of places, a goat is an asset and a girl is a liability. Ruma spoke, and she's from Barmer. But I've met a girl from Ajmer, and her name was Naraz Nath. And I asked her, and I said, why is your name Naraz? And she said, क्योंकि सभी इतना नाराज थे जब बेटी पैदा हुई. A girl called Antim Bala because everybody hoped that she would be the last girl to be born. Girl called Achuki, somebody who has arrived, not wanted. And it is this that actually keeps our girls, more than anything else, from either entering the school system or from completing their education. I started Educate Girls to change this. And over the last 12 years, we've been working in some of the most remote, rural, tribal villages. And what do? We actually, first and foremost, recruit a community volunteer. We call them Team Balika. These are young, educated volunteers. And we recruit them, we train them, we support them. And the first thing that we do is we go door to door and we find every single girl who's either dropped out or never enrolled. Every single girl. And over the past years, we've had a 100% saturation approach, so which means that if we get into a district, we're in every single village in that district. So if Jhabua has close to 800 villages, we're in 800 villages. And which means that we have knocked on every single household in a district like Jhabua. Same in a district like Sirohi, or in 18 districts where we're present today. It's a very heavy-duty exercise to go to every single door and to find every single girl. But what it also does is we don't just do this, but the second thing we do is we do it very smartly. We have an Educate Girls app. All the data that we collect is on the smartphone. The data is good quality. The data is in real time. And it helps us map very quickly where the out-of-school girls are and how can we reach them fastest. And this is really important because we know, sorry, I'll get to why it's important later. But beyond this, beyond finding the girls, once we find them, we actually do a lot of community mobilization, village meetings, neighborhood meetings, individual counseling of parents to make sure that the girls can come back in. We work on infrastructure, working with school management committees to make sure there's drinking water, separate toilet for girls, all of those things that will help the girls stay in school. And then all of this would be useless without learning. So we actually run a supplementary learning program, making sure Hindi, English, math, everything is covered, so that we can actually close the gender and literacy gap forever. And it's important because we know that once a girl is educated, she's more than twice as likely to educate her children. So it is something that we have to do just once in our lifetime. It is the battle of our generation, and it's our job to close it. But as we do this, between enrollment, retention, learning, working on infrastructure, finding girls, We know that this model works. Our most recent randomized controlled trial showed that Educate Girls was able to bring about 92% of all out-of-school girls back into school in a matter of 3 years. And it takes 3 years. Thank you. And it takes 3 years, and it's interesting to look at it because parents, the first year, were actually able to send every 7, 8, 9-year-old girl because it's easiest to convince parents to send them. By the third year is when we're able to convince the 13-year-old, the 12-year-old, the most at risk of child marriage, and convince the parents to send her to school. And that's why it takes. So it takes, for some girls, a few weeks, for some, a few months, and for some, it's just such a bigger process. In terms of learning, our results were compared against a control school of regular government schools versus our schools. And what the evaluator found was that our children they gained almost an additional year of schooling versus the regular school, and all delivered by a community-based volunteer, a young volunteer between the age of 18 to 25, that they were able to bring about such a big change. So what does this really mean? It means that we have a model that works. And we know that this model is scalable, it's replicable, it's smart, it's sustainable, and systemic. It's smart because it uses a lot of technology, it uses deep analytics, it uses data. It's sustainable because it is powered by the community. It is run very much by the army of community volunteers on the ground. And it's systemic because it's in partnership with the government. It's not about designing a parallel delivery system. So with this sort of knowing that this is where we were, we actually built our vision for the next 5 years. And we said, let's be really bold. Let's be really, what is our big blue sky vision? And we said that in the next 5 years, we will bring 1.5 million out-of-school girls back into the school system, which would mean that we would solve 40% of the problem of out-of-school girls in India. And to put it in perspective, India is in the top 3 when it comes to out-of-school girls. It's massive. The problem here, and if we solve 40% of the problem in India, how huge would that be? And I know you're probably thinking this is a little insane. This is one organization based out of Rajasthan. You're barely, you've just barely completed 10 years of existence, and how can you even stand here and say that? And also because India is not just a country, it's a subcontinent. We have 650,000 villages. How can you say that you'll do 40%? And that's because we've used data and because we've used technology for so long that we have a key insight. And that insight is that 5% of villages in India have 40% of the out-of-school girls, which means that we don't actually have to work across 650,000 villages. We have to scale to 35,000 villages. And if we saturate these 35,000 villages, we will actually be able to solve a very, very large chunk of the problem for the country. So that's where this big vision kind of comes from. And it's important that these 5% of the villages also have the highest burden of other related indicators. They have very high malnutrition, they have child marriage, infant mortality, maternal mortality. So if actually we work in these 5% of the villages, and we're able to solve the problem in these villages, you will actually trigger a very, very large multiplier effect. And that's what we're really going for. So now that I've kind of explained about the vision and what we do, I wanted to come back into the collaboration piece. And regarding the collaboration, I wanted to talk about 2 things. Educate Girls became the first organization in Asia to become an Audacious Project, which is a really big deal. Thank you. And when they asked us to apply, we kind of said to them, "Ye hamare liye nahi hai." We actually really felt that this was not for us, because only US-based organizations and Western INGOs have actually ever won this. And we kind of felt this is not us. And then, we finally applied, and when we made it, it really made us reflect. And it made us reflect that we were there, and we opened the doors for other organizations in India to actually get all the way there, is because of the vision. Because the vision was audacious enough, it was big enough. And it was a vision that people could gather around. 14,000 Team Balikas on the ground today are committed to this one vision. We have 1,800 full-time staff completely committed to this goal, this vision that we have on the table. We have our board, we have our partners, we have the government, which is committed to this vision. But most of all, we have our donors. And I kind of wanted to talk and take a pause on the collaboration of the donors, because I feel like the vision will just stay on paper and it will just stay a vision unless the fuel that propels it is actually good fuel. It's collaborative, it's strategic, it's smart. And that fuel for the nonprofit sector really comes from funding. And when we reflected back, we kind of realized that we were in this position. We were in this position of being an audacious project because we had had the smartest philanthropists, the most strategic philanthropists, the most empathetic philanthropists who had been supporting us from the beginning. And I kind of want to take a few examples of that collaboration. When we first started, donors gave us failure money. They said, you want to try something difficult, you want to try it in the most difficult geographies, we'll give you money to fail. So we changed our model, we iterated constantly, we course corrected, ऐसे नहीं करते हैं, इसको ऐसे करते हैं, इसको इस तरह से नहीं करते, अच्छा इसके साथ partner करके इनसे ये सीखते हैं, वहाँ से ये लेके आते हैं. And they gave us room for years just to keep on shaping, molding, till we got to the right unit economics, until we got to the right sort of replication stage. And that's really important for an early stage nonprofit to have that kind of money, that you can actually go down one path, come back, try another path, come back. And I don't think we would be here if it wasn't for those donors who actually gave us that kind of money. When we got to be larger and we built our first 5-year plan, a funder came on board as an anchor funder. And I don't know, I know Edelgave is an anchor funder to another really, really, really spectacular NGO. And that's such a big role for a philanthropist to play, is to become that anchor. Because they provide you with that spine of money for a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan on which all the other money can kind of be built on. So actually that accelerates your road towards getting to your goal, is the role of that anchor funder. And we were very lucky that early on, very early in our journey, that we actually had an anchor funder who made a 5-year commitment. At that time, they were the only donor giving us 5-year money. We've been very lucky that we've had donors who have stayed with us for a very long time. Usually we fund a 1-year project and we parachute in and parachute out. But it's very rare. I don't know if anybody's here from Dasra. We were Dasra's first giving circle. In 2008, 2009, it was meant to be for 3 years. That giving circle continues to give us money till today, almost a decade later. And it's all unrestricted money. I think LGT is definitely in the room because I saw them earlier. But they started funding us almost 9 years ago. And not only have they continued to fund us, but they've quadrupled their donations to us. As we have scaled, they have scaled their support. But most importantly, they have never given us money for program. They have only given us investment capital. You want to invest in technology, you want to invest in systems, you want to invest in talent, you want to they only will fund us to build a strong organization that we can get to our goal. Now that we're part of Audacious, we're seeing a whole other level of collaborative philanthropy. And that's what gives me the confidence that we will meet our goal. All of our Audacious donors actually require one report every 6 months. It's the simplest report that I've ever encountered in terms of donor reports, really. And it's so meaningful because it means that Educate Girls can spend just 2% of our budget of fundraising and servicing and reporting, just 2%. And the rest can all go towards our goal. And that's fabulous. I don't think there are many organizations that have that kind of privilege, that have that kind of amazing donor support that actually propels it. I also want to say majority of our funders are unrestricted funders. It's unheard of in the philanthropic world that NGOs have the largest chunk of their capital is unrestricted. The largest chunk of their capital is multi-year. It takes us all the way to our 5 years. And so it's important for our civil society to build a big, audacious, bold vision, a blue sky vision. But it's also equally important for us to have that collaborative philanthropy backing it, that patient capital, that flexible capital, multi-year capital, that room for failure. And I don't just mean these as words. I mean, just in practice, we see this every day. Educate Girls in 2015 launched the world's first development impact bond because we were worried that scale is just scale and replication, but is it scaling quality? Are we still having a value add when we've reached our 1 millionth girl or 10 millionth girl, that we will be working with? So the development impact bond was very much about proof testing. That you scale, but you scale quality. Because when money is tied to result, that's when you'll really be able to see whether you're scaling quality or not. And during that time, and I'm come back to the nature of the money, it was an innovative financing tool, yes, but year one, we met just about 25% of our target. Year two, only 50%. So for the first 2 years of a 3-year transaction, we looked like we were going to fail. But the people who were supporting us, and this again going back to the strategic philanthropy, and they give you that room, they didn't pull out. They didn't just bash us over the head saying, "Arey, tumhara data to kitna kharab hai, tumhara to performance hi nahi aa raha hai," and that we're going to shut this down. They were so patient with us. They sat beside us and tried to ask the question saying, why? Where do you think the gap is? And we did classroom observations, we did error analysis, we revamped our entire learning content, we built new worksheets, we did all kinds of things in that second year when we felt like we weren't going to reach our target. And the third year, when the final results of the bond came out, we had achieved 160% of our learning gain target. And that really, I wanted to give that example because that collaboration really means. It means sitting on the table and solving for that problem together. But anyway, why do we want to do all of this? And we want to do this because I have never met a girl who said to me, "I don't want to go to school. I want to sit at home. I want to do the housework. I want to get married early." Every single girl I meet wants to go to school. And by having that vision and by having the right capital, the right supporters, we want to be able to make each of those dreams come true. I'm Safeena Hussain. I educate girls. Thank you. Okay, I'm always petrified of that question. And I'm petrified because I always have a hard time answering it without getting too emotional. So I'll try and keep it simple. I grew up in a very rough childhood. There was a lot of violence and abuse in my own life. I myself dropped out after the 12th standard and didn't do anything for 3 years and was labeled, कि इसकी तो शादी करा दो, इसका क्या होगा अब? And then somebody came into my life and changed my life around, and education really changed my life around. I'm so sorry, I hate this question. Not like, But yes, and so it started very much from my own need to see that happen.
I just wanted to know if you could share a little bit more about some of your collaborative work with other NGOs that you've done in the course of Educate Girls phase 1 and sort of phase 2 going along.
Yeah.
You've touched upon collaboration with donors, but how about collaboration amongst NGOs?
Again, I think that collaboration is really key. So for example, when I first started, we didn't know how to do learning. I'd never worked in education, so I asked UNICEF to come and teach me things. So they came in and we collaborated initially, and now we're one of UNICEF's largest partners in Asia. We collaborate with Solzark for our pedagogy needs. So again, we don't do it all in-house. We actually partner with the best in the sector to build our learning content, for our trainings, for so many different pieces. And right now we have on-ground partnerships with NGOs. So for example, in Madhya Pradesh, if there are local NGOs that have much deeper relationships with the community, who know the community a lot better than us, then we will actually partner in terms of execution. So we partner in terms of content, training, just model building. We partner in terms of execution. And then we partner in terms of just process, best practice sharing. I'm part of a lot of peer groups that we have of female social entrepreneurs where we kind of just support each other because this work is hard. And sometimes as a social entrepreneur, it's also very lonely. So really creating those little pools of support for each other. And yeah, that's just some of it.
Having successfully taken the first development impact bond across the line, as it were, and done so well, what's your view about DIBs and SIBs in India? What do you think is the potential for that in India?
Yeah. So I think as we solve complex social problems, we need every kind of tool in our arsenal. And there are lots of different tools. And I think DIBs are definitely one of those tools. When we were doing it for the first time in education, the DIB taught us so much. It taught us so much about how do you decentralize and how do you push decision making as close to the ground as possible. It taught us course correction, rapid course correction, and kind of like the need for it. It allowed us, our error analysis got really sharp, our data-driven decision-making got really sharp, and all because of the DIB. I think the DIBs as tools, because they're so new, they still have a lot of room to evolve, and they will. I think as they grow into, let's say, a social impact bond or whatever. I think there are a couple of places where that evolution really needs to happen. One is having standard outcomes that they can be structured around. And these outcomes should be dictated by the government and not necessarily by private parties. Right now, each transaction becomes really bespoke, just because there's not that overall framework available. So I think, A, it needs that. It needs a very standard outcome framework. Then you will actually be able to create a marketplace for DIBs. Right now, they will stay as very isolated, bespoke transactions, very difficult to migrate from one to the next. And for NGOs, it'll become very important. If it has to become a funding source for a lot of the NGOs, it needs to turn into a marketplace. The second is it needs to evolve is to get to greater scale, which I think it will still again evolve. But those are the two kind of pieces that I feel where the evolution's required. But I think it can also be replaced. Like the thing with the DIBs is, what we learned was the nature of the money is important. What form it takes is kind of, from the NGO end, it's kind of immaterial. So what I mean by that is, if you just gave me, let's say Edelgive gives me a grant which is tied to a result, it's multi-year, it allows me to course correct, it'll be very similar to the kind of money I'll see with, let's say, a DIB or a SIB. So that nature of money is, I think, kind of key, but I hope that they will grow, I hope that they will evolve, and I hope that they will be able to create more impact for the sector.
Thank you so much, Safeena. Thank you. Please give her a big hand.